The Sunday Times has published a damning piece of reportage about Keir Starmer. It's titled Keir Starmer's Not Driving the Train, Confessions of His Inner Circle. It's an extract, in fact, from a new book by Patrick Maguire and Gabriel Pogrund. It paints a picture of an ambitious and vain, but politically vacuous figure who aspired to become Prime Minister more for the prestige than to pursue any specific political agenda. Now, most explosively, the authors suggest Keir Starmer is not really running the country. Here's a quote from the book about how Starmer is viewed by his own aides. So Morgan McSweeney, the most key aides, or the most important aide, let's say, Morgan McSweeney and his acolytes saw themselves as insurgents within the Labour Party. As long as Starmer's private office was functional, they could control the party's politics themselves without interference from small-minded Westminster villagers. They knew that Starmer's real life, his true self, was not the work they shared with him. Their political project was predicated on this unpolitical leader doing as he was told. In his weaker moments, even McSweeney would confide to friends that he knew neither what Starmer thought nor whose advice he had taken. Occasionally, they even spoke of their leader as if he were a useful idiot, said one, referring to the driverless Docklands light railway that wound its way through East London. Keir's not driving the train. He thinks he's driving the train, but we've sat him at the front of the DLR. So, Ash, you never know with because it's always, they'll never tell you who said what when they write these books. It would be, if it was Morgan McSweeney that said that would be kind of stupid, right? Because his success is very much sort of dependent on Keir Starmer doing well. And that's a really damning thing to say about the guy. But they said, we've sat him at the front of the DLR, so he thinks he's driving the train, but actually it's the driverless train. We're running the show. How problematic is this for Keir Starmer?
I mean, it's not uncommon in politics for the figurehead and the strategist to be two different individuals. So Margaret Thatcher, you had Keith Joseph, the person who's the most effective public face of a political project. They're not always the person drawing up the policy agenda. That's normal. I think one of the things about Keir Starmer, which isn't so normal, is that I think that Margaret Thatcher, obviously, don't rate her politically at all. I think that she had a theory of change and she was a sort of compelling public presence, shall we say. Whereas Keir Starmer is sort of uniquely quite vacuous. And I think you could see it quite early on in his leadership of the Labour Party. Personally, I'll never forget him taking the knee in solidarity with BLM protesters in an empty conference room, sort of gazing into nothing. And that's the man through and through. I think you can tell where his interest lies when it comes to the act of governance. He's not particularly interested in domestic politics, not particularly interested in the economy. What he likes is flying around for conferences and junkets and standing up on a lectern surrounded by other heads of government. I think it's something which appeals to his ego. It makes him feel important. Whenever there's a prime ministerial trip, particularly to Washington, and then there's the sort of lobby shot of the journalists surrounding the prime minister on the plane. I bet Keir Starmer loves that kind of thing. I don't think he's actually that interested in the political project itself. And one thing that I heard from a senior Labour source was that in 2015, when Keir Starmer was but a newly minted MP, still wet behind the ears, he was already confiding privately to people that he wanted to go for the leadership. Now, that's not a man who's got a strong political vision, a strong sense of what he wants to do. He just likes power for power's sake. It's ego and it's status.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, as well? Because I suppose when Boris Johnson was a bit like that as well, didn't really have any strong beliefs. David Cameron was a bit like that. But I suppose with both of those two, they seemed to enjoy being in front of the camera, right? They were kind of the PR people. They were sort of the personality, and the policy was made somewhere else. So with David Cameron, it was George Osborne, who was really the policy guy. With Boris Johnson, it was kind of whoever was willing to do it. But Keir Starmer, what's he getting out of it? If he doesn't have a political project and he seems, he doesn't seem happy when he's in front of a camera. He seems like he's having a dreadful time when he's being interviewed. I suppose he likes the feeling of being in Downing Street. And I suppose you said he does seem to like meeting world leaders, which I suppose would be quite interesting. Is he just doing it because he finds it interesting, Ash?
I don't know. He doesn't seem to be someone who's also really interested in global politics either. I think he's someone who likes to feel important. I mean, I don't want to say too much because I'll get in trouble. But all I'm saying is, I think everyone has somebody in their family who loves status. And you can recognize them from a mile away. They love puffing up their chest and they love being the person who's the most successful person in their family. And there's a big degree of ego there. I'm just saying we recognize the personality type.
Well, I think the more explosive thing is one person in every family, Ash. I've met most of your immediate family. They all seemed quite humble people. So I suppose I wonder who that leaves out. No, you're a humble person as well. There's one more part of the article which centres on the days in 2021 after Labour lost the Hartlepool by-election. That was when Starmer tried and failed to demote Angela Rayner. And this is from the article. Rayner, still smarting, later texted one confidant to remark that she did not know who ran the Labour Party. It could not be Starmer, she said, because he was incapable of running a bath. Never mind the opposition. This is the kind of thing that you can see why someone would brief that to the Times, because it makes Rayner sound kind of powerful. It makes Starmer sound like an idiot. Rayner apparently sent that message after Starmer aides persuaded her to abandon a coup she'd been plotting in 2021 after she was sacked as party chair. Owen Jones has published an article corroborating some of the claims made in that extract. So he says Angela Rayner and her team definitely were plotting to overthrow Starmer. He also confirms that Starmer used to contact him to complain about being criticised. So Owen says, he got in touch with me repeatedly about my criticisms, both in my Guardian column, but also tweets. He is just very thin-skinned. This was manipulated by the Labour right because as Starmer violated both the letter and spirit of his leadership campaign platform, that caused ever-growing outrage from the left, which the Labour right offered as evidence for why he should crack down even harder on them. I suppose what we should discuss now, Ash, is not so much, who Starmer is, but what the implications of that are. Do you think the fact that he seems a bit vacuous politically means that sort of his leadership is always doomed to failure? Does it mean that there's a degree of unpredictability? Because if he falls out with Morgan McSweeney, he might suddenly side with some left-wingers instead. What's the significance of having a somewhat hollow prime minister?
Look, I don't think that Morgan Sweeney is going to, emerge as a friend of the left anytime soon. What his political mentor is Peter Mandelson. That gives you a sense of the man's ideological affiliations. However, having a, weak, vacuous character at the heart of your political project, it does run the risk that at some point journalists are going to start magically noticing all the things that they conveniently overlooked for the past few years. I mean, we saw that with Theresa May, and it was really quite astonishing. Before the 2017 snap election, she was constantly being presented in the media as this very powerful, draconian, hard-nosed figure flanked by police officers. You very rarely saw her without those police officers. Suddenly, after the loss of her authority within the Conservative Party, losing her majority within Parliament, she was, presented as, weak and brittle and pathetic and besieged. Now, part of that was a reflection of political reality. You had this mutinous Conservative Party, but also it was this sense that the press were happy to tell one story when everyone else was telling it. When everyone else is telling a different story, the press goes along with that. Ditto Boris Johnson. I mean, it's not news to anyone that he's someone who thought that the rules did not apply to him. He's someone with a track record of dishonesty in every, professional office that he's ever held, magically overlooked until suddenly everyone started noticing. This is around 2020, 2021. Rishi Sunak, super Rishi, eat out to help out Rishi Sunak. Oh, wait, we've all noticed that he's technocratic and a bit tetchy. This is the pattern of the press, which is, in the words of Boris Johnson, when the herd moves, it moves. Now, if Keir Starmer already has so many people close to him in his, proximate to his inner circle, talking so much shit about him now, when sure, Labour aren't doing well in the polls, but it's not even been a year since their general election win. They've still got a powerful parliamentary majority. There isn't a political threat which is destabilizing them in any way. Of course, they're doing badly in the polls. If this is how people are talking about him now, just think how it's going to be in a year or two's time. I mean, really.